Circe's magic. In the story of the Odyssey, the sorceress Circe was known for turning any man who visited her island into a pig using a magical potion. When Odysseus and his crew landed there, several of his men fell under her spell and were transformed instantly, and Odysseus only managed to resist her magic because a god gave him a special plant called moly. Incredibly enough, this isn't pure fantasy at all. When botanists looked at the island where the book said Circe lived, they found something crazy. It had plants that could cause powerful hallucinations, confusion, or feelings of losing control. Some researchers believe the potions Circe used may have been based on a real plant mixture, possibly one containing a toxic plant called henbane or jimsonweed. As for moly, the protective plant Odysseus used, some scholars think it may have been based on snowdrop, a small white flower that contains a natural chemical shown to help block certain toxins from affecting the brain. So Circe's magic might not have been magic at all. It could have been an early form of pharmacology. The Halcyon Days. There's a story about a woman named Alcyone who was so devastated after her husband died in a shipwreck that she threw herself into the sea out of grief. The gods, moved by her sorrow, transformed both her and her husband into kingfisher birds, allowing them to be together again. According to the myth, Alcyone would build her nest floating on the surface of the sea, and because of this, the god of the winds calmed the waters for a period of about 2 weeks every winter, giving her enough peace to lay her eggs safely. These calm days became known as the Halcyon Days. This story actually has a crazy twist though. Looking at actual weather patterns in the Mediterranean, around the middle of winter, this region does experience a real, recurring pattern of unusually calm weather, right in the middle of what should be a stormy season. Ancient sailors would have paid very close attention to a pattern like this, since it gave them a rare, safe window to travel when the water was normally too dangerous to cross. Without any scientific understanding of wind systems, they may have turned this pattern into the Alcyone story. The River Styx. The Styx in Greek mythology was a river of the underworld so sacred that the gods swore their most unbreakable oaths on it, and its water was said to be a deadly poison. For centuries, people thought this was just a story, but then historians and scientists started looking closer at a real river in Greece. It is called the Mavroneri, and what they found was pretty strange. This river's water is unusual. It flows down from the mountains through limestone caves, and scientists discovered that the limestone crusts can have bacteria that produce a highly toxic compound called cullicamycin. Local legends even claim the water could eat through metal cups, and while that sounds exaggerated, the water does have a slightly corrosive quality. There's also another dark twist tied to this place. Some ancient writers claimed that Alexander the Great may have been poisoned using water from this very river. All in all, the Mavroneri might actually be the real-life Styx River. The Lotus-Eaters. In the Odyssey, Odysseus and his crew arrive on the shores of a mysterious land known as the home of the Lotus-Eaters. According to the myth, some of his men ate a strange plant called the lotus, and once they tasted it, they lost all desire to return home. They forgot about their families, their duty, and even their own identities, wanting nothing more than to stay on the island forever. Odysseus had to physically drag his men back to the ship and tie them down just to force them to leave. For a long time, this was treated as just fantasy. However, scientists eventually looked at where the story likely takes place, along the coast of North Africa, and they found a plant called the jujube fruit, sometimes known as the lotus fruit in ancient texts. This fruit has a naturally sweet taste, and when it ferments, it can produce mild alcohol-like effects. Ancient sailors, especially those who had been traveling for long, grueling stretches at sea, may have consumed this fruit and become intoxicated. This likely made them reluctant to continue their journey, preferring to stay put and eat the fruit. The Lernaean Hydra. In the myth of Hercules, his second out of the 12 labors was defeating the Hydra, a serpent monster living in the swamps of Lerna. It had multiple heads, and every time Hercules cut one off, 2 more would grow back in its place, making it seem almost impossible to kill. He only won by burning each neck right after cutting it, stopping new heads from growing back. When researchers looked closer at the actual location of Lerna, they found something interesting. This area was known for having several underground water springs, all flowing out from different points in the swamp. This means that if locals tried to block or dam up one spring to stop the flooding, the underground water pressure would simply force the water to burst out in 2 new locations. Hercules defeating the beast by burning the stumps likely represents an ancient, successful drainage project where locals burned away the marsh vegetation and sealed the sinkholes with fire-baked clay. This is why some historians believe the many heads of the Hydra could actually represent these multiple water sources. The Sirens. In the Odyssey, the Sirens were one of the main dangers for sailors. They were mysterious creatures whose singing voices were so beautiful that no man could resist them, driving sailors to leap into the water to their deaths. When looking at the type of coastline these myths often describe, however, rocky islands with narrow, hidden inlets, something interesting comes up. This same type of coastline was once home to large populations of Mediterranean monk seals, animals known for resting on rocks and making loud, weird calls that can be heard far across open water. To ancient sailors passing by at a distance, especially during foggy days, these calls would have sounded strange, almost human. Some historians believe that sailors mixed together the scary sounds of these animals with local legends until the story evolved into the Sirens myth. Unfortunately, these real-life sirens are today among the rarest and most endangered marine mammals in the world, with an estimated total population of only about 700 individuals in the wild. Scylla. In the Odyssey, sailors faced a terrifying creature named Scylla, a monster with 6 heads and a pack of vicious dog-like mouths, living inside a cave on one side of a narrow sea passage. According to the myth, any ship that sailed too close to her cave would lose several crew members instantly, as she would snatch sailors right off the deck with her long, snake-like necks before they even had time to react. On the opposite side of this passage was another danger called Charybdis, a massive whirlpool that could swallow an entire ship whole. The thing is, this story holds some truth. The actual location this myth points to, the Strait of Messina between Italy and Sicily, is a narrow channel known for strong, unpredictable currents, along with hidden sharp rocks sitting just beneath the surface of the water. Ships passing through here could easily be pulled off course, smashing into these jagged underwater rocks. Also, there are deep sea caves where crashing waves compress air and water, producing deep, barking-like sounds that echo across the water. In fact, the Greek root of Scylla's name literally translates to puppy or barking dog. Many historians now believe this is where the myth of Scylla came from. The Golden Apples. The 11th of Hercules' 12 labors was retrieving the golden apples from a hidden garden at the edge of the known world, guarded by a fierce, multi-headed dragon named Ladon. These apples were said to grant immortality to anyone who ate them. Here's something interesting though. Ancient trade routes were slowly introducing a new kind of fruit to the Mediterranean. Citrus fruits like citrons and early forms of oranges brought over from parts of Asia. To people who had never seen anything like them before, these fruits would have seemed insane. On top of that, people noticed that these fruits seemed to last much longer without rotting compared to other ones, which may have created the idea that they held a special power to preserve life. Also, citrus fruits contain vitamin C, a nutrient that helped prevent a deadly disease called scurvy long before anyone understood what vitamins were. This could explain why people associated them with health and long life. Overall, the golden apples in the myth might have simply been oranges. Fun fact, to this day, the botanical term for the fruit of a citrus plant is a Hesperidium, named after the Garden of the Hesperides in the myth. The sunken city of Helike. You might know about Atlantis, the sunken city, but there's an arguably even more interesting similar case, Helike. Ancient Greek stories pictured it as a wealthy coastal city, known for its beautiful temple dedicated to Poseidon. According to old accounts, one night the city vanished completely, swallowed whole by the sea, as if Poseidon himself had grown angry and decided to punish its people. For centuries, sailors even claimed they could still see the remains of statues and buildings sitting underwater whenever the sea was calm enough to look down. Helike supposedly existed along the coast of the Gulf of Corinth. But here's the crazy part. In 2001, they actually found that buried beneath layers of mud and sediment were the actual ruins of an ancient city, complete with building foundations, pottery, and coins, dating back to exactly the time period the myth described. Geological evidence at the site showed clear signs of a massive earthquake, one strong enough to cause the ground to sink suddenly, allowing seawater to rush in and swallow the entire city almost overnight. This matched a real natural disaster known as soil liquefaction, where shaking ground temporarily behaves like liquid, causing solid land to collapse and sink without warning. This means the story of Helike was a real historical event, not just a legend. By the way, we also talked about where the Atlantis myth likely stemmed from in part 1. You can check it out through the link in the description. The Symplegades. In the story of Jason and the Argonauts, there's a terrifying obstacle called the Symplegades, or the Clashing Rocks. According to the myth, these were 2 massive rocks sitting at the entrance to the Black Sea, and whenever a ship tried to pass between them, the rocks would suddenly slam together, crushing anything caught in the middle. Jason only made it through by sending a bird ahead first, timing its flight, and then rowing his ship through the gap at just the right moment before the rocks closed again. Of course, this seemed impossible, so people never even thought to look for something like that. However, when you look at the actual actual location this myth points to, the narrow channel of water that connects the Black Sea to the Mediterranean, the story starts to actually make sense. This strait, known for incredibly strong and unpredictable currents along with sudden fog and shifting winds, was dangerous for ancient sailors navigating it in small wooden boats. The narrow passage made it easy to crash into the rocky cliffs, but the most important detail is something else. This strait creates a parallax effect. As a ship sails past and the viewing angle changes, this optical illusion causes the overlapping rocks to look like they are rapidly merging. This is likely where the myth of the Symplegades comes from. If you want to discuss this video or suggest an idea for the next one, join my Discord, link in the description.